Welcome back to the Greg Herenda Show, where we are honored and extremely privileged to have another Greg on the show. We have the class of 1966, Mr. Greg Olsen, returning to FDU, the airwaves. Greg, welcome to the Greg Herenda Show.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, man, I told you before air, and I texted your secretary and Kenny. This is the most nervous. Now, we've had Phil Simms, Jay Wright. We've had a lot of illustrious guests, but to do what you've done, knowing where you've come from and the scope of it, really, really excites me and makes me privileged to have you on the air, Greg. It really does.
Well, thank you.
Tell me about, and now the Greg Herenda Show is about the genesis, and I've done my research, and I know your dad was an electrician.
Yes.
And he taught you, and he fixed everything around the house. Tell me about growing up. Did you ever look up at space and say, that's what I want to do? Or when did that evolve? And what kind of a kid were you? Give me Greg Olsen at 11, 12, 13.
Well, I was sort of a screw up as a kid. It's a long story, but you know, I did well in grammar school, but once I got to high school, didn't do that well. I was about a C student.
Yep.
I flunked trigonometry my senior year. Got suspended several times.
Wow.
I was convicted of juvenile delinquency in Bergen County Court, if you can believe that.
Wow.
They use that term anymore, but.
Yeah.
And somehow here I am talking to you. So it's a long journey. You know, back when I was 12, 13, that's when Sputnik happened, 1957, the first object to orbit the Earth. And we were scared because, you know, it was the Soviet Union back then.
Sure.
We all thought they were a bunch of savages, and here they are ahead of us in space. So
yes,
it was a frightening thing.
Tell me now, I could tell you have that Brooklyn. You were born in Brooklyn.
Yes.
How did you guys get over to Bergen County in Ridgefield Park? How did your dad make that transition?
Well, when I was 6, he and another buddy who worked with him at the Brooklyn Navy Yard decided they were going to move up to the Poconos and live in the real rural area where they could go hunting and fishing. And, you know, in order to do that, they bought the only service station that was in the area. But even in 1951, you couldn't make it on $20 a week. So my mom and kids, we stayed up in the Poconos during the week. My dad went back to Jersey, worked as an electrician. He would come up on weekends. In 1954, we moved back down to Ridgefield Park, and that's what gave me the Jersey connection.
I love it. Now, what do you attribute, like, you know, something had a trigger that if you had issues as a teenager, and a lot of us do,
Yep.
In school and maybe outside of school. Now, how do you evolve into a tremendous student, getting multiple degrees at good old Fairleigh Dickinson University? Was there a person or a moment that changed your life, or did you just suddenly grow up?
No, it was my dad. And I didn't get along with my dad, as many of us didn't growing up. He was tough SOB. Like I said, electrician. He had hands like vice grips. And if he grabbed you around the neck, boy, someplace.
Yes.
So I basically stayed out of his way growing up. That was the plan anyway. And, you know, he wasn't a guy that you reasoned with. It was just his way or the highway, and
right.
That's it. So after I graduated high school, after failing trigonometry, my plan was to join the Army and then go into his electricians union. So I took the test for the Army and I passed, but I was just 17 when I graduated high school and I needed my parents' consent. So I handed the paper to my father and said, Dad, I need you to sign this so I can go in the Army. In 1962, you joined the Army to see the world. This was pre-Vietnam. So he looked up at me and said, you know, Greg, it's getting hard to get into the union, and they may start requiring 6 months of college. Why don't you try it? And if you don't like it, I'll sign the paper for you. My dad never was that reasonable
Right.
any time in my life. And all I could say is, blah, 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 okay. I mean, I was never faced with him. He'd normally say, why do you want to do something stupid like that?
Sure.
I'd storm off and probably forge his signature. That's what should have happened. But instead, I agreed to try college for 6 months, went to summer school to make up the trigonometry, and started engineering at FDU in the fall of 1962. I got all C's my first semester. And I remember Dean Galanti back then saying, Olsen, you can't continue in engineering with marks like this. You either have to, you know, shape up or ship out. And by that time, I had met a study group, which I highly recommend to anyone in college. Find a study group.
Yep.
That are taking the same classes as you, especially in math and science classes, because
Sure.
you know sometimes you have a problem set and you can't figure it out. But usually with 4 people, 3 or 4 people around, you will figure it out. And besides, these guys, most of the study group were foreign students, and they knew if they didn't do well,
They were going back.
so you know that's what turned me around.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
The 4th semester, I made Dean's list and was okay after that.
I think more than okay. For FDU, your memories. Now, were you on the Rutherford campus? Where did you actually take most of your courses?
TNEC.
You were in TNEC.
TNEC
Okay.
campus. In the 1960s, FDU had a pretty good technical faculty. Physics, chemistry, engineering. Because I found, you know, when I went down to University of Virginia after getting my master's in physics at Fairleigh, I was totally prepared. In fact, I was a little advanced in some areas.
Great. You go to Virginia now, and obviously you're in Charlottesville. I was offered an assistant coaching job in Charlottesville for Pete Gillen and the Cavaliers. And for some crazy reason, I did not take it. But that's one of the great campuses,
Yes.
other than FDU. Charlottesville is one of and the University of Virginia is a tremendous campus.
Yeah.
Tell me about your time down there.
Oh, well, let me tell you a quick story you'll appreciate. Last year, we had a fundraiser, and we had the singer Tony Bennett, who was 92 years
Oh,
old.
I love Tony.
Guess who introduced him?
Tony Bennett.
Yes.
Oh,
That
that's great.
Went very well.
Oh, yep.
Yeah. UVA, after I got my master's in physics, I got married. And our honeymoon was Charlottesville. So in June of 1968, down we go to Charlottesville and, you know, lived in a small apartment. And then we got married student housing in Copley Hill and spent about 2.5 years there. And as you probably know, as a graduate student, you just work all the time.
Yes.
Basically work, come home, eat, sleep, work.
Yes.
And that was it. And then after UVA, I did a postdoc position in South Africa for 1.5 years.
Your life, man, is just like, it's an incredible, like if you wrote a book about it, it would be hard to fathom. And when you look back at night and you're driving, excuse me, and you see the stars and knowing that you're the 3rd citizen to get to the International Space Station, and that you were a C student when you got to Fairleigh Dickinson, and your father gave you some wisdom, whether he knew it or not, that changed your life. Do you believe it, or is it? How do you feel inside, Greg?
I feel like the luckiest person alive. I sometimes say the luckiest person on earth, but that doesn't apply. To point out that today, is the 15th anniversary of my launch from Kazakhstan. So it's a
Congratulations.
big day to me.
That's an awesome, and just by happenstance, we have you on the show. So I'm very, very proud and humbled to have you on 15 years post your mission. How did that start? I mean, like, I don't know, even though, like, who do you call and say, hey, I want to go to Spain? Like, how do you do that?
True story. Yeah. In June of 2003, I was sitting in a Starbucks with a big coffee and a newspaper, which you can usually find me at in the morning. And I read this article about Space Adventures. They were the company that started these trips that would enable civilians to fly into space via the Russian Space Agency, because it wouldn't take civilians after the accidents. So I read this article and I said, wow, this sounds like something I'd like to do. And I just sold my company 2 years ago, so I was ready for this. And you know, next thing I know, 6 months later, I'm in training in Russia. Now,
it's amazing.
Session, I was in training for 3 months. Then I had a minor medical issue that knocked me out for a year, and it took me a long time to get back in. But I just persevered, and my motto is don't give up. And after the 6th rejection, I was thinking, you know, maybe this isn't going to happen. But by the 8th time, I brought my pulmonologist over with me with a bunch of x-rays and medical reports.
Sure.
And we go into this meeting with the Russian doctors, and they come out saying, Olsen, we accept lungs. So that enabled me to go back into training, and I did for another 6 months and launched in September 2005.
That's incredible.
Yep.
Tell me about, obviously you're an adventure seeker. You're an individual that takes on big projects, but tell me about the night before you went up, or maybe a few weeks prior. Did you have any inhibition, or were you afraid? What were your human feelings inside?
You know, fear is something all of us deal with. And I learned to deal with it this way. All during training, I had something that would cause me fear. For instance, the first time I went in the centrifuge, where they spin you around and you have up to 8 Gs of acceleration force applied to you. And the night before, I'm thinking, wow, what if I get sick and barf all over the capsule? You know, what's going to happen? But when it actually came time to do it, I was there. And just as, you know, before our launch, days before, I'm thinking, hey, suppose we go up in that elevator, you know, you see the astronauts waving to everybody. What if I panic and say, hey, man, I don't want to do this, you know, let me out of here. That's what I worried about before. But once I was up on those stairs, I felt great. And I said, let's go. And I've always tried to push myself that way. Whenever there's fear, just keep going.
Just keep going.
Yeah.
Tell me about liftoff, like, or if that's the most exhilarating, or what. Tell me about the trip. Obviously, it took time, and there were different phases, but I know you went up there and you conducted experiments. You weren't up there as a tourist. You were up there as a professional and as a scientist and as an astronaut. Tell me the most exhilarating. Did you look out the window and see Teaneck, or?
It was, yeah, I did actually, not then. The most exhilarating part was when I felt the engines start to fire.
Wow.
Remember, I had a medical disqualification.
Right.
Walk around, you know, we have a heart monitor and they take your pulse all the time. And
sure.
I was worried, suppose as I'm walking out, I find something wrong and they say, okay, guy, you can't go.
Right.
So even as we're walking out to the Soyuz rocket, So I get in, they belt us in, they train us, we practice, put the suit on, put it off, put it on, put it off.
Yeah.
And here we are, we get in, and there's always somebody doing it for you. You just have to sit in the chair, and people are hooking up hoses and strapping in. And so, I'm feeling good at this point, but we had to wait for 2.5 hours inside the capsule before launch. And I had 2 cups of tea before. And we all wore Huggy diapers.
Good.
And we all used them. And I'll tell you, I did. So when that finally, the Russians don't do a formal countdown the way NASA does. They just sort of go.
Right.
And when I felt that rocket go, I said, yes, that the next 10 days belong to me. Nobody can take this away from me now. And believe it or not, I had the lowest heart rate of the 3 crew members. And I just felt like, wow.
That is cool. Now, who were the other, Greg? Who were the other people going up with you? Were they Russian?
They were professionals. NASA astronaut Bill MacArthur.
Yep.
And Russian cosmonaut Valery Tokarev. Now, we trained together for 6 months. And, we had a training capsule, and we would be inside of this thing 3-4 hours a day, practicing maneuvers.
Sure.
A good part of that is these guys got to know me. And afterwards, we would have dinner and share beer and so forth. And they learned, well, this guy's not a nut. He's not going to do something crazy. And they also knew that while I was not qualified to fly the vehicle, to operate it, I knew all the safety procedures, the safety and emergency procedures. In fact, when we came down, I came down with a different crew. We lost about half our air supply, and I was the only one that could reach the emergency oxygen valve, and fortunately was able to hold it open.
Wow.
So I did participate in the launch, and I think I had the confidence of the other trained astronauts and cosmonauts.
Well, not for nothing, you look like an astronaut, man.
Thank you.
And you have the suit behind you. Is that the suit that you wore 15 years ago?
Yes, both the spacesuit and the flight suit. The capsule that I landed in is on the Intrepid Museum in New York City. If you ever actual, with scorch marks and all.
I'm going to go over and see. I'm going over the Hudson, and I've got to see that.
Yeah, it's right below the space shuttle that they have on the Intrepid.
That is incredible. And you're a radio operator. You're a licensed radio operator yourself, correct?
I was a ham radio operator in high school. Now, young people, they don't know what it means, because we didn't have internet or computers. So we would build our own radio transmitters and receivers and communicate that way. So there is a ham radio station up on the space station. And I renewed my license. I took the test again, and I became a radio operator.
Well, Kenny O'Boyle, our engineer, will be happy to know that. He's our general manager at WFDU, and you've been so generous and gracious to our university, and you've made the second $5 million gift. And hopefully, I know the times are crazy and it might slow things down, but your student center, the Olsen Student Center, will be the beating heart of our metropolitan campus, is how Chris Capuano phrased it. How excited are you? I know we're incredibly indebted and excited, but how does it feel to come back and give?
Wow. I mean, just thinking 58 years ago when I walked on campus and I just didn't know which end was up.
It's incredible.
And here we are now talking.
I could go on, and you're a golfer. Don't tell me if your handicap is below 10. I'm going to say you're not real. Like, what's your handicap?
I'm a 13.
Oh, well, you know what? You make money at 13.
Yeah. I'm playing with Chris tomorrow at Due Process in Colts Neck. Folks.
Well, I'm available at any time to play. I know I'm not sure if you would go beneath the stratosphere and play with a college basketball coach, but I love the game, and I would love to spend time with you. You're your wisdom and your knowledge, if you can just impart, my student athletes listening, our students listen to the show,
Yeah.
our alums, our fans, and our families. Can you impart some wisdom to?
Sure, and I bet it's the same thing you tell your players. Don't give up. You know,
Yes.
there's 1,000 reasons why you can quit or just say, I'm not good enough and so on. And there's only one reason why you go on, and that's yourself. You have to tell yourself. Story I say, when I played Little League baseball in Ridgefield Park, I was so bad that the coach used to say, Olsen, don't swing. Maybe you'll get a walk. 5 years later, I played Babe Ruth ball, and I made the All-Star team.
I love it.
It took 5 years of dragging my bat down and going to batting practice and not giving up and withstanding the taunts of other kids who might have been better at the time.
Sure. Last thing before we go, the clock is ticking, Greg. What else? You know, a man that's done so much, has helped so many. The amount of money that you gave to Virginia, to Fairleigh Dickinson, there's just so many, to young women and minorities to get into math and science. What's next on your horizon? Do you have another, is there another goal in your life, or you just take it one day at a time?
Right now, the goal is getting up tomorrow morning. You know, I am so grateful that I've had this luck. In many ways, I feel like I don't deserve it, but here I am. So part of my enjoyment is sharing it with others.
I was told by my father that luck is a product of diligence, you know, and obviously, you know, you've worked so hard. I love the fact that your scholarship came from the union of your father's
Local 3, IBEW. Yep.
I mean, you're an American dream come true. I mean, and sometimes you can say it, and I feel it as a college basketball coach. I grew up in North Bergen, and we went to the Division I tournament. We're the first team ever to win an NCAA game. And so everyone has different levels, but I just love your message of, you know, never giving up, being a perseverant person, and most of all, being from Fairleigh Dickinson, and right where we had a player, Dondre Roden, come from Ridgefield Park. So it's really special that you're here today, that you've given back so much. And I just can't. I talked to Rick Reese about you and Chris, and I met you the day that we did the dedication, and just so impressed and so honored to be with you.
I'm glad to be part of the family.
Hey, no, well, that's it, man. Amen. Greg, I'll let you go. Tell Chris I said hello.
Will do.
I know he's going to want us to win the not only the NEC, but he's going to want us to win the national championship. We're trying to come with trying. We're going to try to do that. Yeah. And I'd love to have you come back when we're allowed to have you come to campus and talk to my team. I'd really.
I'd love to do that.
Great. Greg, thank you so much, sir. You're the greatest.
Thank you, Greg.